Welcome, viewers, to this special discussion. This is the second one in a row, and we are discussing issues that pertain to you. Of course, you know, this afternoon there's the State of the Nation address coming by the President, and subsequently next week there's the budget. These might feel like they are off from where you are. They might be like, those people are saying their own things, but they affect your lives. Either you know it or you don't. And in the studio, these discussions are designed to help you see where you can connect, see where you can maybe benefit, see where the gaps are. And our inclination is towards solution beside analyzing the challenges. So welcome to join us. And it's part of the budget month, which is inclined at creating more budget transparency. And so that the common man can be able to know what's in the budget and how it affects them. My guest in the studio this mid-morning, on my immediate left is Miss Adress Chirabo, Executive Director for the Food Rights Alliance. Ms. Chirabo, welcome.
Thank you so much, Samuel, and good morning. It's still morning?
Yeah, still morning.
Okay, good morning, viewers.
And on her immediate left there is Ms. Jane Nabunya, Country Director, IRC Uganda, International Water and Sanitation Center. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you very much, and good morning, viewers. Good to be here.
Very good. And finally, we have Mr. Keith Kisame, Research Fellow with Accord. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you, Samuel, and good morning to our viewers.
Very well. The thing on the mind of many people is State of the Nation address. It's weighted upon because now we have COVID, we have economic challenges. Life is hard. So sometimes we're discussing this morning and sometimes I pity the president. He has to say something that makes many people happy. I don't know whether it's possible. But let me start with each one of you. You're going to give me your expectations of the State of the Nation. It does not matter. It's your expectation. So let me start with Ms. Chirabo. What are your expectations from the President?
Okay, thank you very much, Samuel. A foodie, this is what they always call us, refer to us. Me and my organization believe in food first and everything later. And we also believe that life begins and ends with food. And this is where we pick our expectations. You know, it is quite immoral that we are in this country of plenty and we are counting millions of people going to bed hungry. And people going to bed hungry talks about two things: their inability to earn and feed themselves, or their inability to produce and feed themselves. Those are the only two ways we feed ourselves. So I expect the President that by and large, when the barrels of the gun, in a broader sense, are silent in this country, and we are regarded a more or less peaceful country on those indicators of we are not at war, even when we are not at peace. But I would have loved him to speak about how people are living in this country, from the primary basic things that make them be. How come that the numbers of people that go to bed hungry? You know, I insist on issue of food because in any case, if you cannot feed yourself, what else can we discuss with you anyway? Where else are we expecting you to be? You know,
you're hungry.
Perhaps we are expecting you next to be in hospital. We cannot expect you to be in school. You cannot be among the innovators. You cannot be among the thinkers. You cannot invest. So you're not an entrepreneur. You're not a market. You cannot even buy anything from a market. You know, that is the state. Millions. By the way, when we are talking about millions, they're above 10 million by 2017 before COVID.
Below subsistence.
No, not below subsistence. We are talking about 10.5 million by 2017 of Ugandans who are in acute hunger and they could not feed themselves. So I'm expecting the president learning from COVID the strategies that we are having to get the people out of that absolute poverty, out, you know, and restore the dignity of them. But also, secondly, I would also be, as a person, happy to hear how the president is going to rescue the tents that people are living in today. If you're not dying of hunger, you're going to die of COVID. If you're not going to die of COVID, you're going to be abducted. If you're not going to be abducted, you're going to be shot. Because if they can shoot a Jane on the streets of Kampala, then anyone is not safe. So look at the people of Uganda that are poor, that are hungry, but they are very, very scared. And I know having this kind of population under your leadership makes your work very, very difficult.
So you expect him to speak about that. Let's move on to Jen. Jen, what are expectations? You're also in water. She's in food. You're in water.
My expectations, and yes, I'll start with where I am, water, sanitation, and hygiene. And these days we also add environment, climate change, and all those things that fall under that category.
Yeah.
COVID has taught us many lessons. And one of the greatest lessons, which is really cheap, and for a long time we've been singing, wash your hands.
Now we wash everything.
Wash your hands. Previously, when I started working in the sector, you talk about water, you talk about sanitation, toilet, open defecation, stop open defecation, sanitation. And I think people would think, hey, what's wrong with these people? But COVID comes and really brings onto the table the cheapest and easiest thing to do.
To survive.
To survive. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. This sanitizing is the latest one.
Alcoholic
but water and soap. Not just washing with water, but with soap. So for me, I would like the president really to raise the profile, the agenda, the seriousness around water, sanitation, and hygiene high on the agenda of his program going forward. Not just water for transport, water for infrastructure, but the basic water. Is it safe? Is it reliable? Is it affordable? You know, is it affordable? What is the quality like? What is the quantity like? I want my president to really think through issues of water, sanitation, and hygiene very seriously. Give more money, proper funding to what we call WASH. Look at the environment in a different way. Not take things for granted. You stop cutting trees, stop misusing the wetlands. I think he needs to come out strongly as the head of government, really, to say, hey,
down his foot.
Guys, wetlands, no, stop cutting trees. Because where we are going, really, it's a crisis. It's a real crisis. And here, because it rains, and then it shines, and then the rivers flow, and then the lakes are there, we take things for granted. We believe we have the water, that it's there. It is not there.
It isn't there.
It is not there. And the earlier we really look at it differently, as a public good, of course as an economic good, but it is a good. And then we look at the service. It's not just about opening the tap. What quality of water is flowing from that tap?
It's full of rust.
You know, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. So I would really like my president to raise the profile of water, sanitation, and hygiene to the highest level. Get more involved.
And it's part of, I think it's the human development program.
I think it's, yes, and yes, exactly.
Capital development.
Human
Yes.
capital development.
Yes.
Increase access to safely managed. Safely is very important. Increase access to safely managed sanitation. In this day and era, people are still defecating in the open.
Wow, yeah.
How? Why? In this day and age, you have to tell somebody, wash your hands with soap after using the toilet. Eee! Are we moving backwards? Or we are moving forwards?
Okay, Jen, and we'll come back to some of those issues. See, food, water, really basics. And maybe sometimes they are wished away as usual things.
Yes, routine.
Let me come to you, Keith. From your standpoint, what do you expect?
I think it's first of all important to understand what this address is. Even for the people that are watching us, the State of the Nation address is supposed to give us a picture of where we are as a country, and then based on that, be able to project where we are headed and how we get there as a country. So it addresses contemporary issues that we are faced with as a nation. And in line with that, perhaps the most contemporary issues are issues to do with our economy. Growth has been picking up, but at a slow pace, because obviously because of the effects of the containment measures we put in place to control the spread of COVID-19. But we find ourselves in a place where the cases are now starting to pick up again.
Again, for the COVID.
For COVID. So health, the debate between health and economic stability is back to the fore. When we had the first wave, we didn't know much, so we opted to close down everything to survive. And then later on we discover that actually that was not really effective, because by the time we start to open up, the cases were still going up
again.
And the lockdown had such devastating effects to the nation, to households, to individuals. At all levels of consumption, there were such devastating effects, even globally, because we are not unique in this. So the most contemporary issue for me is that balance between economic stability and growth and keeping the population healthy. Because there are two key issues that we can't run away from. So how I'm keen to hear from the head of state how, as a country, we deal with the contemporary issue, which is COVID, and the second wave. They are projecting a third wave after this. But at the same time, we have realities that are biting.
We are not turning the corner at all.
No. So how do we stimulate this economy to grow in the midst of the present health challenges that we have? I think that is the most contemporary issue of the day.
And you make me think, shouldn't we then temper our expectations?
Absolutely.
Growth-wise, spending-wise, and so on. Because there's a big animal.
We should, and I think that is reflected in the growth projections that we have as a country. I think we haven't gone back to projecting growth of the 7% that was envisaged prior to COVID. What is perhaps of a bit of a concern is that we have not tempered our expectations in terms of expenditure. We've continued to have expansive fiscal policies in the midst of very challenging economic times, and as a result, our public debt is going up and up and up, and it's those are the things, the realities of the day that we have to contend with.
Thank you, Keith. Viewers, don't say now they have started their growth things. Don't go away. We are going to discuss things concerning you. Growth concerns you, but you think it's abstract. I've covered growth for 20 years until I realized that no, you have to make it
Yeah.
palatable. Let's go to the issue
fair.
before Ms. Chinawa, you come in. One of the things we are going to see next financial year is this thing called parish development model. Let me ask you, Ms. Chinawa, first, are we reinventing the wheel?
Surely we are, just as we have been on so many things. A couple of years, not so many of them, I sensed that we are getting into a repentance mode, which is good because as a Christian, the Bible encourages us to do that. You commit sin, but the biggest sin is not acknowledging that you committed sin. And, you know, you raise up and move again in a righteous way. The parish development model is not new. It's a pre-colonial kind of model. And one of the arguments I've had with the framers of it is that don't promote it like it started yesterday.
Okay.
Let us promote. By the way, if somebody wrongs you and says, okay, I'm sorry, but I'm here to reconcile and we move forward, you move faster than somebody comes like, and you appear like, you know, you're a saint and you're putting something new on the table. The parish development model is a good model because it worked in the days it was invented. And there are certain cardinal things that were happening that I'm doubting whether we are ready to deal with them now to allow the model perform. The issue of managing or striking a balance between our intentions for 2026 and the development of the people, the expectations of the model, becomes a very critical challenge.
Okay. What do you
the
mean?
issue of power. Because then the parish chief was a real chief. He or she, I doubt whether there was any she that time. The parish chief was a real chief that had power to regulate, but also to govern the community, to collect data, to assign tasks to his community, to keep the governors at the higher levels informed and abreast. And there was a minimum cost of that administration.
Okay.
But currently now, for every structure that is created, for every opportunity that comes with it, I mean that comes along, the administrative costs that comes with managing that innovation or approach or something, they become so enormous to really see the intentions achieved. I have put off for quite a good time to look at the proposals as they were around April. I know there are so many other developments that have been proposed. But you see a good intention, but with a lot of doubts of how it is going to be placed, and things happen. The balance between the parish now, the way it has been conceived, and now up there is the sub-county, but somewhere they're still thinking about the cow. You know, at one moment in time there was, I think it was a slip of a pen, where they were saying the cow is going to be the credit manager. I was like, oh my God, he cannot be, you know. So they are still quite structural things, and things that we had normalized in our governance system that we need to break down if actually to accommodate that model and let it work. Okay. The other aspect that is very difficult is how actually the money is going to flow.
There's little money in the beginning. There's less money in the beginning.
You know, that is how always we've talked about so many other programs that came. You know, when you look at SAGE, we don't want to go there. We're always saying we are starting with very little money. But also the communities are looking and holding their hands, watching to say, you guys, you came here with NADS, and you left unceremoniously. You reappeared with Operation Wealth Creation. We don't know whether it still exists or not. Are you the same people after failing on one, you craft, you know, you create those doubts. in the communities. So we have been encouraging that we need a candid conversation that allows the breaking down of silos. Government for a number of years have been talking about merging and breaking the silos, I think.
Yeah.
And now when the economic times are hard and we are having very few resources and we still have institutions that are running with illegal mandate, then you're going to see the scramble for money, and we forget what the good framework that has been put on paper. My prayer is, can we allow this baby to be born?
That's a good thing.
Can we allow this baby to be born? We live with the baby. We see how we nurture the baby to grow. That is my appeal number one. My appeal number two, that even when we meet challenges, other babies have met on the way.
We don't give up.
Let's not rush to conceive a new one and we throw this one aside. Because actually the people who are older than me say the model worked for them, because it organized quite a number of things, and we have to go back into organizing quite a number of things. Finally, the model, when we are starting, and we have appealed to the technical team drafting this model, the economic times are so hard, not only today, we honor that we have been a very poor country, but living like a very rich guy. We have been poor for quite a long time, and that is why you're talking about templing and all those things. We are appealing that we cannot start this model on the 19, I don't know how many enterprises. We are not going to learn anything. We are not going to nurture anything. The list is growing every after a second. Why? Because another influential person gets into the room and says, but in my village we rear ducks, and tells the ducks story, and before you know the ducks are on the list. Then another one comes, and another one comes, and another one comes. And we have also been made aware that some sectors are stuck with their sector investment plans. Like agriculture, they had moved into developing the sector investment plan and concluding it. We are going into the second year of financing it. Now they are stuck because the conversations of the parish model are happening. We appealed that I think one of the challenges this model is going to receive at the start is where it is coming from. And we appealed that, okay, if it is part of the planning framework, let it go back and be championed by the National Planning Authority. And then we see that the government leadership is asking all the relevant sectors to see how it gets adopted into their strategic investment plans. Otherwise, it is going to become some other people's project and bleed room for misconceptions and prejudices.
You gave a very good analysis from your standpoint, having looked in. Let me come to you, Jane. This thing is here. It is embedded now in the budget going forward, starting small as the budget indicates. How can we make it then work? You're in water and sanitation. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Coming down from sub-county and coming down to that level of implementation.
Samuel, I think I'm the happiest person. And I'm starting from a very positive point of view. As you've said, it is here. The baby is born.
Yeah, as Ms. Chinaba said.
Parish level is an administrative unit. It's not a local government. Government starts at sub-county, going up. We who work in the program, now it's a program, sectors are gone. The water and environment sector, or the program and sub-programs, it's very difficult to do work even up to the village level, because government does not transcend.
It hasn't reached there.
We want government to reach there. The parishes are there. The questions for me are, what is the capacity right now of the parishes to take on this load that is coming?
That's a good question.
The parish chiefs, the parish leadership, the communities that occupy that parish. What is the capacity? 2, what is the understanding of this animal that is coming from the clouds?
Yeah.
Are there plans to actually first deal with the understanding and appreciation, and therefore the buy-in? We don't want to rush into things. In water, for example, government goes up to the district water office.
Yeah.
There's nothing below.
Yeah, that's true.
So we struggle at the sub-county level, which definitely means we also struggle at the parish level. And then we go and borrow the health assistance, which is really health. But because health has also seconded people, water and sanitation people, to support the water offices, then we know there is somebody, but we also know that the allegiance is in health. So for us in water, it's even complicated because it stops at district level. So are they jumping too fast to go to the parish before they consolidate the sub-county? Don't we need something at the sub-county level first before we start talking parish?
Financier was here a few days ago, and they said they have realized the sub-county is too high.
It is.
To reach the village.
It is. And that's why I started on the positive note. I like the idea.
Yeah.
I like the model when I read it on paper. And as Agnes has said, it was there before. And when you look at it from the kingdom side, I am a Muganda and I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
The kingdom, they have the Murukas.
Actually, parish is Muruka.
It's the Moluka.
The Murukas. And there is an effort really through the kingdom to capacitate
The
The
Muruka.
Moluka.
the Muluka. Now, if we look at all these efforts, and as Chirabo said, stop working in silos.
Yeah.
Come together and consolidate this baby and make sure the baby is healthy. How do all these pieces come together to make sure that if we are going to have this parish model, it does not have the capacity. We've not done an assessment yet, or the assessment is there, I've not looked at it.
Yeah.
In terms of capacity. Capacity to exist and survive as a model and to handle money. If big money, even if they start small, if big money is going to come and go
from
down,
up, yes.
we all know what money does. It can confuse people.
Absolutely.
And if a parish chief is not strong, the parish chairperson is not strong, the committee there is not strong, and the money comes, confusion.
Yeah.
I think we should receive this parish model. We who work in the communities, we've already received it in the form that it has come. And if there are any other aspects from the previous forms, then we can put them in there. Because when I stop at the district level and I stop at the sub-county level, I have not reached the people.
No, you haven't.
I'm not anywhere near the people. You know, what are the platforms at the village level, at the parish level, that enable the communities to say, Tetulina mazzi,
We don't have water.
we don't have water. Or the water that we have is not good. We have cases where somebody will say, this borehole, the water is not for drinking. It doesn't taste so good, but it is there. And so you ask, where do you get drinking water? I will go back to
The spring.
the spring.
Yeah.
We go back to the spring. We want all that that is not safely managed water. Now we are talking Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals. We are not leaving anybody behind. So everybody has to move.
Yeah.
So if to enable everybody to come on board, we require going to the parish and nurturing that model and making it grow and making it work, then I am in.
Okay, let me move to Keith. Research Fellow Accord, Development. How do we insert, you've heard the ladies, they spoke about it's a good thing, but the way it is worked, how do we plug it into the existing system effectively and therefore let the national agenda trickle down to the last man if possible?
I think one of the the starting point is to respond to the question you posed at the start and say we are not reinventing the wheel,
We've
like
been there.
the ladies have been saying. The clearest example I can give you is the village health teams. That's an example of a parish model at work,
Yeah, VHT.
the VHTs, and that is something our viewers can relate
Very
with.
active.
That is an example of a parish model at work
Already.
So we are not reinventing the wheel, it is something that is already operational. So what is new is that there is an intention to bring the developmental initiative of government down to the parish level. That's what the discussion is about now and what the intention is. The first thing to realize is that this model has, I think, 7 pillars.
Yes.
Yes.
And the pillar that has garnered the most attention is the one of wealth creation. Because that is where the biggest discussion has been, to drive the 3.5 million households that are not in the money economy out of poverty into the money economy. How do we do this effectively? Back to the question, is first of all not to implement it out of the decentralization structure.
Absolutely.
Because once we do that, then we will frustrate the development initiative and effort that is at the district, sub-county. Some localities actually have many more elements of administration. There are municipalities, there are cities. Now there are cities in key areas. And so if you go outside the decentralization structure, then you're going to have, first of all, you're going to have a duplication of mandates, which is what we have seen with the ministries and agencies, and hence the discussion of rationalizing government. Because you have an agency undertaking a mandate which also
Somebody else
doubles
is doing.
under a ministry. So the first thing to do is to ensure that we are not going outside, that we stick to the decentralization structure we have, which has been ignored in a sense, sub-county downwards. Right now, if there is hardly anything happening at the sub-county. And perhaps that's the reason why we are even talking about the parish model, because in the first place, we have not had much going on at the sub-county. But at the sub-county, you have fully fledged accountability organs of government. You have a sub-county chief who can account for money, who can spend money. You have all the planning entities and all these offices represented at that level. But many of those offices are not empty.
Fully functioning, in fact.
There is hardly anyone at those sub-county levels, for instance, who belongs to the planning department. So you find that the planning function at the district rests with 1 or 2 people. You cannot be effective. So we have to, the first thing to do is we have to strengthen the decentralization structure, which is there, which is the sub-county, that will be able to provide effective oversight to this model. To the parishes. It is very good to bring money to the people. But that money has to be channeled through the existing structures. If you're going to be in OPM and channel money to a circle, that means you have to drive a car from OPM to go down to the parish level and monitor. So the monitoring function, the day-to-day running of this should be left to the responsible agencies of government that are close.
I'm told that there is a training model for the building capacity for for the parishes. It is there. Even the money is there in the budget.
Yes.
I think that's
It's
the
not,
direction.
That's the
it's
style.
not a new thing. It has been there. Parish technical planning committees.
Yes.
They've
Parish
been there.
development
Development
committees.
They've been there.
They have been there, only that they have been idle.
Yeah.
We, like Keith has said, we have not been supporting these structures. And that is what I told you, is that when you happen to people having repented and doing what you're supposed to do, and you appear like you're introducing something new, then there is a lot of debate that wouldn't have been there. And we are spending a lot of time in debating. The thing is, let us capacitate the structures that are in there and work within the framework. By the way, what Keith is talking about is very, very critical. If this program is championed and outside,
They will fight it.
Yeah.
no, it is just normal, because like he has said, you do not have the capacity to traverse the whole country at a go.
And there are many parishes.
And there are many parishes.
But Chiravo, let's not also forget, because sometimes we tend to make generic statements, and we forget that there are certain areas in this country where this thing has worked and it is working.
And it is already working.
I work in the districts. My focus is in the Rwenzori region, mainly Kabarole district, Bunyangabo district, picking up all these learnings, and we work with organizations in Kamwenge, in Chenjojo, in Chegegwa, up to Ntoroko and the Bundibujo. When you go to what they call the rural districts, the Rio, these things are there. Village health teams.
Yes.
Where you stay? Do you even know a member of your village health team?
No.
I don't. I stay in St. Amgono. But they are there. When you go to those districts,
They know them.
they are there.
And they know
are
them.
known.
And they are offering a
You get it?
service.
So it's mainly in these urban areas where things have sort of disappeared. But when you go to a proper rural district, for a long time I worked in the north, in Lira district, Kitugum, Aleptong, and I would go to those sub-counties and the parishes. The leadership is there, the chiefs are there, the local traditional cultural people are there. You know, they know what they need, they know what they want, they know their gaps. And I think for me, how are we capturing those successful cases and using them?
So are you saying that they have not brought you guys who are on the ground, who see these things on board? Is that one of the issues?
We were consulted, at least when I
Yeah.
look at my own sector. I
Yeah.
can't speak for the other sectors. We were extensively consulted,
Which is a good thing.
which is a very good thing. And we were able to provide that evidence that there are places where things are working, but there are also places where things are not
Do you
working.
feel it's going to be used, all the experience you gave? Do you think?
It is going to be used. You see, Samuel, government is government. Let's not play around with that. I have my former professor, Professor Kwesiga, would say, even if government is on drip,
It will be a government.
It's still government.
it is still government.
Absolutely.
So let's not take that for granted. They give us the space to work, they give us the space to operate. And we don't want to take that for granted. But then we also don't want to squeeze ourselves into that space as if it's not a favor. But then it's a favor, because at the end of the day, it's government. So I think government needs to be serious on a number of things. Decentralization. How long have we had decentralization? Now we have cities. I come from Masaka City. I am in the city. Sometimes I look for it, I can't see it, but I am there. If that is the direction, then let's follow that direction. Let's provide criticisms on that direction with solutions. Not just say, you see. Criticism with solutions in a direction. And a direction is provided by government. But when the government also starts wavering, in my language we say, when the back is not holding, you're not too sure whether the direction is there or not there. You're not too sure what to follow. You are a researcher. You do a lot of research. You generate this evidence. Where does it go? Who is picking it up? How is it being used? You want to see findings of your study that are really genuine, going up and being used.
So on the consensus from what I hear from ladies and gentlemen, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
We just need to do our homework.
Exactly. Who is going to keep track of the money? You talked about, when we were talking about the introduction, State of the Nation, with all this corruption that has become part of us.
The ecosystem,
Somebody is watching that money trickle down and say, hey, it is going to this parish. Why?
Actually, somebody said we are redistributing corruption.
So all those checks, who is plugging the holes?
Just like the case said, I think actually case, the pillar that has attracted a lot of controversy is the one of financial inclusion.
Because there is finance.
Because there is finance. And we have failed also to focus on harnessing these other pillars, many of whom are already existing. Like we have said, the village, the
parish committees.
The parish committees are already there. Some other services, like let's say for agriculture, we had moved in some local governments up to the sub-county. We have a sub-county extension officer. You know, some of these services just need a small push and they go in. But there is the way the whole country has been caused to focus on the money. And when the money reduced, at first when we were having discussions, so Parliament discussed the budget, we are expecting around 39.
It was 400 billion for
and so distributing it to all the parishes, it was coming to around 30, 39, it has now reduced. So
30 million.
Yes, I know it has reduced to around, I think, 18 or something. So there was how we focused on that, and it was the only pillar. Instead of leveraging on the existing structures, like Keith has said, and we roll out these other processes. Of course, not forgetting giving people not only tasks but also the power to execute the tasks.
Power and the capacities and the skills. You give me that money, I'm at the parish level. I don't know how to plan. I don't know how to monitor.
And I
don't know how to budget.
I think, Samuel, it is important to point out that the way the model was planned initially was to go full blast. Yes, and then when Parliament cut the money from 400 to I think now 200 and something billion, there was this realization that, okay, let's start small. Where there are no parish development committees, let's have them in place. Let's recruit the people that are meant to be at that level and equip them with the necessary skill. For me, that's a good way to start. And I think one of the things that is also important is what they've been talking about, the ladies have been talking about, is learning. Because the approach we are going to take is the village savings and circle approach, the VSLAs. We've used that in the Women Economic Empowerment Program, Youth Livelihood. We've had high default rates in those programs. So are we learning from those implementing those programs? Because if you recall, the discussion at first was, let's bring all these programs together, Emioga and what have you, and put them in the same basket and have them at the parish level.
If I'm told that we need to go for the break, I thank you for the deliberations, because this thing is coming and no one, maybe you guys have looked in, but many people haven't, including beneficiaries. Viewers, you see we're discussing the budget and the state of the nation. However, there is that parish model coming at you in your parish, and you may not know what, and that's what we're discussing this mid-morning. We're going for the break. Don't go away. We'll come back soon for further discussions on things that you should know that impact on your life. Welcome back, viewers, to our discussion. Earlier on, we discussed, when we were opening in the first hour, we discussed State of the Nation address, but we are waiting. Let's wait. However, we gravitated into the budget, which is passed already. And so you may hear the budget, you think about taxes only. There's much more in the budget than taxes. And this panel in the studio is here to discuss and focus on the things you should know. We also discussed the parish model. It's already embedded now as part of policy, and it's going to be a government instrument by which you are going to receive services. So do you know about it? How will it benefit you? How can you demand from the parish in that direction? Let me introduce my panel again. We have been joined now by Mr. Siraj Magara on my left, extractives coordinator with Oxfam. He speaks more than extractive, so don't say he's an oil man and minerals. No, there's much more to him. And to his left is Miss Jane Nabunya, Country Director, IRC Uganda, which is International Water and Sanitation Center. And finally, on her left, we have Mr. Keith Kisame, Research Fellow with Accord. Welcome again, lady and gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
We want to discuss agro-industrialization. It is number 4 in budget priorities, if I'm right.
Yeah.
1.6 trillion shillings are given to it. And the question we want to discuss now is, how can this money, 1.6 trillion, be realistically treated, handled, so that it translates into real impact on household income, seeing that poverty in the last household survey by UBOS has gone up. Let me start with you, Siraj, our newest entrant.
Yeah, thank you so much, and fellow panelists. First of all, I need to appreciate that it is only in Uganda where poverty comes down and goes up. And the reason why poverty gets annoyed in that manner is that we have not planned our key sectors to deal with them decisively. And a case in point, agriculture.
Yeah.
Agriculture is experiencing a very serious bottleneck of relying on rain-fed agriculture.
Absolutely.
When it rains and the seasons are well, we jubilate.
Too much production.
Yes, and that's why you find that even now, when you look at the poverty levels, they are a little bit, they are deceiving a bit. Because this is a time where we have not had any problem with the weather, and we have been doing very well. Posting it at 20.3%.
21 million people.
20.3 million percent, because it's around 8.3 million people.
Yeah.
That means that we are a bit okay. But if it comes like a drought, and you now do another survey, you get a very big problem. That's why we last had a very prolonged drought between 2016 and 2017, and the growth was very pathetic. Close
it showed in the numbers.
Yes, 2.5% and to 3%. So that means that our poverty has to oscillate depending on the weather. And that's very terrible. That's why each time weather hits bad, then people become more poorer. And we may need to solve this by investing strategically the available resources into dealing with the climate change issues. We don't need to wait for rain to produce. No, that's archaic, because the moment you wait for rain, things may not work the way you want.
But the government has pushed irrigation, big deal, if I know very well.
I know they are doing some good projects for water for production.
Yes.
I think they have injected in some good money. But that water for production is for isolated cases, and they are ongoing projects. But we can start small. This money, 1.6 trillion, which has been given to agro-industrialization, 5.7% of the budget. When we say 68-70% we depend on agriculture, I think it is still very little money, because it cannot help us to mechanize. it cannot help us to irrigate. Because we are talking about giving, for example, you are talking about parish model.
Yeah.
How can we put some maybe irrigation equipment at parish level so that we have irrigation services that for every farmer who wants to cultivate throughout the year, they can be able to access those small powered, solar powered irrigation equipments. So that these farmers, when it shines, they are not going to lose out. That's very important.
It's a recommendation.
Yes, yes, and I see this humble budget cannot really support that kind of agenda. Then we go to the whole idea of climate change. Aware that now I bring in my oil and gas, because we are aware that oil and gas is a very serious risk towards climate change, because you know the fossils and the carbon emissions. And now that we are tending towards that direction, it would be important that we get a very big chunk of our resources to mitigate and adapt to climate change. And that is something that is missing out. If you look in the budget, I think we are going to get around 200 billion from the petroleum fund. That's a very serious contribution. But if we are going to get money from the petroleum, which petroleum and other things are destroying the environment, and we are not investing handsomely in restoring the environment, then we are also losing it. That's why we shall find that we are not sure of what we are going to get tomorrow in terms of the agriculture.
But we want to say now we have 1.6 trillion passed. So we are saying, how do we effectively, we want to deal with that issue. Let me move forward. I'll come back to you, Siraji. Let me move to Jane. Jane, Siraji here is saying it's not enough, and I believe him. However, it's what is there now.
A bird in hand.
So how do we effectively use, where do we start from? And remember, the whole idea is to connect agriculture to industry, so that there is maybe value addition. I don't like that word, but it's value addition. It's a song. Value addition, so that the farmer, the household, gets more value out of their output. Where do we start? We have the money now.
Samuel, we can start anywhere.
Okay. we are discussing solutions.
Yeah, we can start anywhere, which is okay. But I think we need to start by breaking down all these things. Breaking down the issues to the muntu wa wansi. My grandmother, my grandfather, who has land, who has coffee.
Yeah.
I have coffee, and I know now the yields are high.
Yeah, this year.
This year, we are going to do very well, and unless something happens. And for me, it is the connection between your value addition and the reality on the ground. How can value addition, how can you even talk about value addition if my grandfather is using the hoe? Really? This parish model, can it also include mechanization, more tractors?
But there's a smallholder farmer, there's a small land there.
Yes.
And the machines won't make sense.
The machines will make sense to that person, because by the time you get the machines, you're not even a smallholder. You are a little bit above the one who has a hoe or who is using oxen. You know? So I think for me, it's reality on the ground versus the ideal, the good dreams that we have. And taking these things down to the communities. Under the water and environment sector, our SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, is number 6. That is what we dream. And number 6A and 6B, the targets there, especially 6B, is on participation. How are we involving the communities to understand these things, appreciate them, provide you with the evidence that you can use? The trillion that you have, that is yours. I spend most of my time in the villages. They have no idea what we are talking about here. The food, there is food for eating, there is food for selling. So your dreams of 1 trillion, those are your things. And they'll say, those are your things.
I know some of this money could go to OWC NADS, which gives seedlings and everything else with support.
And it can do that. And I have been to places. I've been to districts. For example, Chotera district, Kalisizo town council, they have benefited. I have seen it from NADS. The seedlings come and they are distributed with equality and fairness in mind. Not just that because Jane has a big land or whatever, or is richer than the others. No. So I have seen it work. Some of the coffee I have in my land in Kalisizo, where I also farm, is from there. I got it through NADS. So these things can work. Where they have not worked, and that's what I said earlier, let's not use generic statements because they demotivate. Siraji has talked about climate change, the mitigation and adaptation. You cannot talk about agro-industrialization, really, in this time, and you are not really looking at climate change. You cannot.
Sunshine, rain.
We have gone beyond that. Right now, what should it be? Raining or shining?
Seasons have been
We are all in a mess. So we cannot talk about agro-industrialization. And for me, my understanding is getting money, wealth, creating wealth out of that. You know, value addition at the household. The pockets at the household, not the pockets wherever, but the pockets at the household. And so for me, my appeal, we have all these good strategies on climate change and adaptation. We have a very strong climate change unit in the Ministry of Water and Environment. How do we operationalize all that?
And we say climate change to the viewers, it sounds, what is that now?
That's why I was asking, which season are we in now? Is it raining? Is it supposed to rain? Is it supposed to shine?
And it affects crops.
It affects crops. So for me, mitigation, adaptation, and enabling my 6B to work, community participation, to come on board, understand, participate in decision-making processes, for me that is really key. You talked about irrigation. We now have a policy. We have, it may not be good or bad, I don't know. It's just, it's a new one. But at least we have now a policy, irrigation, that was put together by the two ministries responsible. Ministry of Agriculture
and Water.
And Ministry of Water. They came together. The experts worked together. How are we demystifying that policy and taking it to the ground? I've been to the north, Chigumba. There's a big farmer there who wanted to abstract water from the Nile to do irrigation. They said, don't touch the Nile. You see, the Nile, and then it goes to Egypt. I am a farmer. Break it down for me. That you cannot do this because there are these laws, there are these treaties, there are these words.
So I don't feel you have just refused.
Exactly. I think we need to go that step. And I don't want to trivialize things. And if you've noticed, Samuel, I'm really avoiding going into the technical things because then we'll end up talking to ourselves. I'm talking to that farmer who wants to abstract. The water source is not even far. I have my money. I can buy the pipes. I can buy the pump. What is stopping me from?
Why?
When we go, when explanations are given, they are not detailed. You know, I know a farmer in Kayunga here, wanted to grow pineapples and wanted to use irrigation and had all the money to buy the pipes and the pumps. And they said, you cannot touch it.
You can't touch the Nile.
You cannot touch the Nile. And they stopped there. So this farmer in this community dialogue was saying, I am not daft. I am not stupid. Explain to me why.
Why I can't touch the
And
Nile.
don't just tell me you cannot touch. You see? So I think the workers, the agricultural workers at that level, need to break up these things. It's like me having my research findings, and I understand them.
Translation.
But they don't understand them. So tell me why I cannot touch the waters to do my irrigation. I will understand. I am not daft. Just because I'm a farmer in Kayunga
So
doesn't make me
Jen, your point here
daft.
is, I see a lot of agro-industrialization. Yes, there's climate change, but we need to bring down to the people
Break it down.
who are going to be in fact affected.
There were questions, Siraji, recently when His Excellency the President from Tanzania was here to sign, and then also our own president went the other side. They see people signing. What is happening? Siraji, what is happening?
we'll bring you back, Siraji, to explain the...
for me, I want to remain at that.
Jen, I want to move on to Keith. Keith, under agro-industrialization, and Jen spoke about bringing it down to the people for the basics. I have seen companies like now brewers and Uganda breweries working with farmers in East and also Western Uganda, and they do contract farming. These people grow barley and they're given inputs, but they are guaranteed that somebody's going to buy. And that's a private sector led model. And here we're talking about linking agriculture to industry so that the income backward linkage. So the farmer benefits. How can government, in implementing this, take, for instance, a leaf from the private sector approach to agro-industrialization at that scale?
Let's start by defining how agriculture operates. It's a private enterprise. It is Jane having her farm, deciding what she wants to grow there, based on her interests and her ambitions. For majority of the people we are calling farmers, they are peasants who are just trying to survive. So they are growing food for household consumption. Mainly. If there is any excess, then they sell. So that's the way currently things are. And unless something significantly changes, you can't have agro-industrialization with that kind of production. So the first thing that I have learned through the research we are doing is that for there to be agro-industrialization, there has to be organized production. And the example you gave in making things simple for our viewers is exactly what organized production is. You produce for the market. It is demand-driven production. It is organized. You know the quotas or quantities that you're intending to get out. So the question of how government can learn from this is, first of all, how to prioritize the resources that we have. Contrary to, I will differ a bit from Jane, and I think Kalisizo and the place you mentioned is where she's having the farm, is perhaps one of the few areas that can say they have benefited from NADS, because there are all these reports of the seedlings come late, they come when the rains are gone. The seedlings come when they are poor quality. The seedlings are not what the people want. There are people who are being given coffee. When they've never grown coffee, they don't even know where to start. So and yet when you look at the agricultural sector budget, now before we went into programs, and even when we've gone into programs, when you look at the agro-industrialization budget, the biggest proportion of money is going to inputs. From time immemorial, the farmer has known that the produce I have for this season, part of it is for me to grow next season. So they part with some of it. They don't consume all of it. So getting seed, for me, should not be the priority of government. It should be the priority of the farmer. What government should be doing, and let me say this in Luganda, which is the most widely spoken language in our country, kwe kuwa abantu ebintu bye batasobola kwetuusaako.
Providing things that they cannot access.
Not necessarily access. Provide things that are beyond people's means. Because government has a collective resource. which is the consolidated fund from which it gets and distributes to different priorities. So ideally, government should be giving this private farm something they cannot get ordinarily.
It's out of their reach.
Out of their reach because of resources mostly. And one of those things is advice. That's where the extension workers come in. We have about 3,000 of them for this whole country. I don't have to tell you how insufficient that is.
Yeah, with the parishes
with
now.
the parishes now. There are sub-counties where they don't even have extension workers. I have interacted with farmers who are less than a kilometer from the sub-county, and they've never seen an extension worker. And yet the value of extension is both giving you advice and also giving you inputs. We've gone the input way. My suggestion is we need to ramp up the advice way. To tell the farmer how to get the best out of what they have. To link the farmer to the Nile breweries of this country, so that they can produce demand driven with a guaranteed market. Because what is happening is vanilla limsent. People go.
Everybody goes in there.
And then the prices
collapse.
and people are stuck with these gardens and they don't know what to do. And before you know it, people are telling you, I come from Busoga. You should see the plight that sugarcane growing has brought onto households in Busoga. Wherever you're driving in the villages, there's sugarcane rotting on either side of the road. But these are people who are told there is money in sugarcane growing. That brings me to the next point, what government has to do. Government's other role is to regulate the way the market operates. That doesn't mean that it has to be intervening in the market, micromanaging it. It has to put in place conditions that are conducive, or put in place legislation that is conducive for things to thrive. You had the sugarcane growing bill in Parliament and all the controversies around it, and it just stalled. Now those are the things that we are talking about, that have to, those are roles government can play even without expending much resources. And regulating the markets, regulating production, organizing it. We have production zones which are not informing our planning. We have these ZADIs. There is a DISLINK, or the Zonal Agriculture Research, I'm forgetting the development areas. And there is a disconnect, a huge one, between the research that is being conducted and the production that is being done. So when you go to Naro, you have all this knowledge that is not trickling down to the farmer,
it's supposed to go.
Where it's supposed to go. So let's bridge that gap. And those are very easy things. NADS, before it was disbanded, had one particular advantage. It had a presence at sub-county level. The sub-county coordinators were a channel through which you could take things like that knowledge to the farmers. Let's recruit extension workers and equip them. Because we have the 3,000 I'm talking about, they are the most ill-equipped workers perhaps that government has.
The ones who succeed that I've seen are self-willed. They push themselves.
And they are being driven by farmers as well, because the farmer, because they want the help, they call and they facilitate transport and even other things. They pay for the service, which shouldn't be the case, because not everyone has the ability to pay. So let's recruit the extension workers. Let's equip them with motorcycles, rather than purchasing all these government vehicles that are causing traffic on our roads. Let's purchase motorbikes for these people. The motorbike doesn't take a lot of fuel. So the extension worker doesn't need a car. You can't, if anything, you can't buy cars for all the extension workers. Equip them with the knowledge. Some of them, their knowledge is outdated. They studied at times when agriculture was not the way it is today. And the third thing is to have markets closer to people. Because agro-industrialization starts with cottage industries. Those are industries that are in your home.
In my home, yes.
The value addition you're talking about. I get my maize, I grind it into flour, I pack it. Now, when you do that and there is nowhere to sell, you're going to be frustrated.
So the value chain by government deliberately has got to be complete by intervention.
Yes.
Exactly. So that when you have this cottage industry, it can grow out of the home. Because the assumption is that the more it produces and the resources grow, out of the need for me to get more money, I will have to expand.
Yeah.
Before you know it, it has ceased to be a what? A cottage industry. That is private-led agro-industrialization. It is sustainable. Government cannot set up industries for all these things.
Yeah.
It has to be private sector-led. Government's role has to be a facilitatory one.
Okay. And I saw in agro-industrialization with the private sector, the sugarcane issue, monetizing aggressively a community, which is a peasant, and you cause disaster. Even as pursue.
That's why I talked about money. Said you bring money like that.
Siraj has a burning issue, Siraj, please shoot.
I want to really also connect with what he's saying and repeat the word market, market, and market. I come from Western Uganda, and the economy in Western Uganda rotates mainly on milk production and matoke production.
Yeah.
And our biggest source of market was across Rwanda, and Rwanda mainly and Burundi.
Yeah.
But since the closure of the border, that's why even the poverty indicators, Ankole and Chigezi,
Yeah, I saw Chigezi,
is
Chigezi and Ankole
now competing
with
the Busoga. So market is a very important thing.
Yeah.
The moment market is available, then you are able to see people bringing out their own initiatives to innovate and bring out output to put on the market.
Yeah.
So I don't know how the president is trying to address this, because the Western region is choking on poverty, particularly on that
Milk value chain.
Yeah, the milk value chain and the matoke, and because the markets have been closed. But let me also address myself to the issue of value addition. Yesterday I was coming from Kitugum, Lamo Kitugum. You can't be amazed on how much the mangoes, there is a lot of mangoes rotting in the gardens.
I know about the
And
mangoes
then,
in that area.
then along a sack of mangoes can even now go for 10,000. A full sack of mango.
Yeah.
And this is where we are saying farmers, you farm, then you bring. So now where is the value addition that we are
There are
talking
factories
about?
being built under UDC, and I don't know
Where are they? Where are they?
Where are
And
they?
where are they getting the raw material?
Oranges
If
in
the
Teso.
mangoes in the Acholi region are rotting. So I think we still need to do much regarding, maybe we are doing much of the talking and less of the doing, because if at all we have all these, the Operation Wealth Creation, why do we focus on providing cassava cuttings? Really, as he said, can't a farmer access cassava cuttings? Do you need to spend a lot of money? But if you provided a small machine to make mango juice and some preservatives, then these farmers, they have the mangoes.
They said that
they
in
can
this budget here, 1.6 trillion, the next level is going to be cottage industrialization in terms of those machines.
Then we delay it, because the poverty that we have put in our people is mainly originating from lack of where to sell the products. The moment the market is available, you don't need to tell farmers to farm. You don't need to tell them that you go and look for planting materials. They will get those planting materials.
And at that level, they are not looking at big machines.
Yes.
No. They are looking at the small cottage.
Yes, small.
Yes, cassava.
Yes.
What is that? There's a machine that quickly, after you've peeled the cassava, it quickly crushes it.
Yeah.
You know?
And there is one advantage that does that is not often talked about. It controls prices. When pineapples are in season,
Prices drop.
Everywhere you pass, in those of you that drive along certain roads, you'll find someone giving you 6 big pineapples for
Luwero.
10,000
Yeah.
shillings.
Yeah, Luwero.
Not even Luwero, even here
on the
in,
streets now.
in the
Yesterday I
streets.
bought
The
5
streets.
pineapples at 5,000. So each
Very
one
big.
was 1,000.
So you see now, when you have this bountiful harvest, the prices go down, and the farmer. So if you're buying it at 5,000, 6 of them at 5,000 in Kampala, imagine how much the farmer was given.
Much worse.
Much
The farm
worse.
price is
The farm gate prices
Yeah.
are very low. So if we have those cottage industries, and I hope that the inputs that we focus on, because inputs is not only planting materials, it's also mechanization and some of those things that you've talked about. So if those things come in place, they will be able to suck up the extra production that is not being consumed, so that things don't have to rot in the gardens and farmers are forced to sell very cheaply.
Yeah.
That's what the cooperatives used to do. They would take it up so that the price remains what? Stable. Because if the farmer is getting 1,000 shillings for a huge batch of matoke that they've spent the better
Money
part
on,
of the
actually.
year
Some of
tending
those
to,
money.
they've spent money, it doesn't make sense. They will be entrenched in poverty because the market is not bringing any sensible returns. And that is how we improve agricultural incomes. If you see the people that are mostly represented in the poverty numbers, they are people in subsistence agriculture.
Okay.
So if we improve agricultural incomes, we won't even have to continue talking about this whole thing of mid-income status.
It will come.
It
come
will
on its
just
own.
come
It
on
will
its
grow
own.
out of that.
Before time runs out, and we'll have news at the end of the top of the hour, I wanted us to speak somehow about the biggest issue in the budget that has taken most money by program. This human capital development, 7 trillion. Are we on point this time around? Let me start with Siraj. Has government got it right?
Thank you so much. And I think you need to unpack the 7
I
trillion.
know, yeah.
Because first of all, you realize that the 2 big sectors have been put together in human capital
In the
development.
program.
And that is health and that is education.
Yeah.
And
To
water
me-
is sneaking in there.
Yes.
So
So
it has 2 indicators there.
when you put health and education in there, we really think that still it is not enough. Considering the circumstances we are in, COVID times, when actually when the numbers are surging, the intensive ICUs are full, the oxygen is not enough, sometimes the blood is not enough, everything is not enough. So I think the budget for health and education, I can't say is even close to what we desire. What we need to appreciate is that even when you enter in that very budget, you'll find that much of the money is not on the things we are looking for.
What are you looking for?
We want to see a provision of cancer machines. We want to see provision of ICU beds. We want to see a provision of medicine, adequate medicine. But if people are still going to the health centers and cannot find medicine. People are going to the health centers, they cannot get the services. So that means the budget may be looking big as it is, but we have not gone through it. But you might find a lot of travel abroad. Like
That
the
one was cancelled, I can assure you.
No. You need to check. You need to check.
It was cancelled,
You will see a lot of this non-wage where people are allowances for the travels, and all that money is going there. But very little money going to the service, to the actual things. So I think
I will come to Keith. Let's finish.
I think we need to improve on putting money where people are, not where putting money this side, a few who are going to be well facilitated, but when actually the service is not being delivered. Then let me touch something small on education. I think education is the worst hit in terms of the disturbance that COVID has
Disruption.
brought, the disruption. And for us to think that education is okay and we don't have measures to get it out of the crisis it is in, we are also causing a lot of
What
problems.
are you suggesting? You have something in mind?
Yes, because first of all, you realize that these, especially private schools,
Yes.
they really face a lot of challenges. Many of them were having loans. We had, there was a COVID relief money, which never was, and the money was actually sent to UDB and it did other work. So I hope in this budget, there can be some way of thinking towards helping the education sector before we realize most of the good schools where we have been running to are going to close because the bailiffs will be on their doors. So it is very important that we think about how we can rejuvenate the
And I
sector.
totally agree on the private sector intervention. If government wanted for the human development, because government schools alone cannot
They cannot
take
yes.
up all the demand. In fact, private schools do much more.
Yeah.
Keith, you had.
I wanted to break down this budget, this 7 trillion
human
for you.
development.
Because by virtue of the service provided by these two sectors, their budgets are predominantly wage. Because we
Salaries.
have salaries, it's teachers and the medical workers. I think as categories in, I stand to be corrected, but I think those are the biggest represented categories in public service. So most of 3/4 of these budgets, respectively, for health and education, are going towards salaries. Yeah, and then you're left with about 25% of it that is now meant to do the development part, and the other non-wage recurrent bit. Even after we've crossed into program-based budgeting, these same problems that were
They
there
have not changed.
have not changed. We are still doing almost business as usual. And the biggest challenge these two sectors have had, especially in health, the recurrent budgets are low. The non-wage recurrent budgets. What do I mean by that? The money that runs the service.
Outside paying salaries.
Outside paying salaries. Money for slashing, for example. Money for doing community outreaches. Because most of our effort, especially COVID, has exposed the need for preventive medicine. We have a growing problem as a country, because when you look at the trend of non-communicable diseases, it's rising faster than perhaps many of us expected. So we are headed for a point where we have a double disease burden. You have a burden in communicable diseases, you have a burden in non-communicable diseases.
Non-communicable, so we communicate. What are we talking about?
Non-communicable diseases are things like high blood pressure, stroke, cancer, and all these things. And I think the viewers can relate to this. Nowadays, a few years ago, the cases of cancer were there, but they were not as rampant. There were fewer. The cases of stroke were fewer. Now, they are increasingly being represented in the causes of death for people. So you need to, and these are things that are lifestyle driven in many cases, and people need to be educated. But there is no money for these community outreaches. The money that is there is very limited. These discussions that we are having on COVID, many of the things are self-care. And these are
washing hands.
Washing
It's all
hands.
about washing hands.
Yes, these are things that need money to do all these things. So the structure of the budgets in human capital development hasn't changed. And the problems we've had in the past are likely to continue being there. But The final thing I wanted to talk about is the present circumstances we find ourselves in, and Siraj touched on that. The schools that have the private schools that have no redress mechanism for the financial predicaments they find themselves in, what happens? They are closing.
Absolutely.
They are being sold
yeah.
off to people who are putting up apartments, you know, and that is a very big challenge, because government on its own would require a lot of money, much more than what we can afford to be able to do what? To provide an education service.
Absolutely.
Or
The private sector is very important.
Exactly. So it's important that we come to the aid of these private schools. It is, and we're not talking about giving free money. Putting credit available for them that is affordable.
Yeah, because they already borrowed anyway
exactly,
from the banks.
because they can't go to the banks, because credit from the bank is still very high, is still at very high interest rates in the commercial banks. So government has to think through how we bring the lending rates down, how we avail credit at low interests for some of these facilities targeted to the education sector, because they are one of the sectors, it is one of the sectors that never benefited from the relief that was given. So those are things that are crucial. And when you do that, you help people to survive. These are taxpayers. The advantages are many. The biggest consumers of agricultural produce are schools.
Beans,
rice,
name it.
So if we help them to thrive, this is how we boost the economy. This is how we start to pick up growth, because they can't buy the food if they are not existing.
Okay, thank you very much, Keith. And we can see that, thank you very much for trying to unpack it. People think, human capital development, it is health, and education mainly.
And rural water supply.
Rural, too, on water, sanitation and hygiene, increasing access to safely managed water, and increasing access to safely managed sanitation.
We can't finish this time without speaking about oil. And on my left there is the oil man in this panel, Siraji. Siraji, the panel before, we are feeling like we are doomed. Money is not enough. There's COVID. We need to move. Debt is growing. Can the oil sector development now salvage us even a bit? And I'm not speaking about the few billions, 400, got from the fund. No, I'm just saying generally. Can the oil phenomenon and what's happening now salvage us even a bit?
Yeah, thank you so much. One thing that we need to notice is that oil is a long-term project. And even when we talk about oil salvaging us, it couldn't be in tomorrow, next year.
So we are still doomed.
Yeah, still count a number of years from today, because having finalized the crucial agreements for the East African crude pipeline, you realize that it can take us 3 to 4 years to finalize the pipeline, and perhaps when the pipeline is done, that's when production can start, and then direct revenue from petroleum can come. But at the same time, you realize that because of the expectations and because of the heavy nature of the costs involved in production of oil, we are borrowing, and our public debt is almost getting through the roof, close to now to 65 trillion USD.
50% now.
Yes. So that means that sometimes we may think that government is borrowing, thinking that they may offset the crisis using oil revenues. But we foresee that in the short term,
2 years,
2 to 3 years, we can be having very serious challenges, because that time we are not going to see oil money, but the debt will have been up, And when we are paying interest of 5 trillion, you know what it means. That means much of the money now will be going to service the debts
Yes.
that we have acquired, and it will limit even the smaller services that we are getting. And comparing it, bringing it to the analysis of our consumptive nature of our budget, I think the strategy would be, how can we minimize consumption, and then we are able maybe to do more development.
When you say consumption, to me, what are you talking about?
He has already told you that much of the money is salaries, wages.
But salaries are good because they...
Yes, they are good, but of course
They facilitate the consumption.
they are consumptive in nature.
Yeah.
When you are going to pay salaries for 529 members of parliament, you are going to pay very heavy civil service. When will you do some serious involvement? When will the final person get a bit of it? Because much of it is going to... So that's what brings inequality. And when she talks about leaving no one behind, it means the salaried people are going to be okay, but these taxpayers are going to be worse off, because on top of paying taxes, they are not helped to improve the agricultural output. They are not able to add value, and they are getting worse off. So that's why we say that going forward, we may want to see a reduction in the consumptive expenditure, so that we do more things that are a bit can improve.
So Siraji, the president is going to talk about, I suspect he may talk about the oil hub in the state of the nation. So you mean we can't get carried away?
There is nothing to carry us away in the short term, as I've already mentioned. But what I would want to talk about is improving efficiency in collecting of revenue, especially even on the mining side. You realize that our tax revenue is close to, they are anticipating around 21 trillion. And we know we have a very big potential from the mining sector. But as we talk, if you look at how much we get from the mining sector, that would help us contribute. And most of these taxes, they go to the common person, try to squeeze the small money that we would have. Everything that you do, and most of it comes out to be as deadweight tax. Because the moment they tax you, you feel you cannot move, the business will have to close. The moment you go where you find taxes are too much and you cannot handle. And that's very dangerous for the economy. But what would be very good is to salvage these other opportunities, like from the mining. How much tax, how much royalty are we getting from the mining of gold?
So is it a case, Siraji, of taxes not being collected, or people there don't have capacity to produce enough so that they contribute enough taxes?
No. First of all, I'm sure we would be getting reasonable revenue from our minerals.
Even as is?
Yeah, as is. But one thing that we need to appreciate is that the sector is still disorganized, first of all. And because we have, I don't know whether it is by design, some people who should be organizing it may be benefiting from the disorganization. Therefore, you find
they want it to remain as
you find that there is no any initiative to improve.
We have a few minutes. Solutions. We have analyzed that problem.
Yes.
What should be done?
First of all, we needed to improve the collection of royalties from the minerals. And the royalties are normally because of how much you produce. And therefore we need to be able to determine how much we are able to produce. How much of gold are we able to produce? How much of marble are we able to produce? How much of any other mineral are we able to produce? So that we know that we have produced so much tons, and we have a royalty of so much.
So effective regulation.
Effective regulation on the production. I know we are reviewing the mining bill. It was recently passed by cabinet, and maybe when such laws are strengthened, we should be able to see an increment in revenue generated from the minerals. And the mining bill stipulates that actually we might increase our GDP by 10% when we are able to efficiently utilize the mineral sector.
We have 3 minutes, and I'm going to give each one of you 1 minute, 50 seconds to wrap up final words. Siraj, I'll come to you last because you've been speaking. Keith, 50 seconds.
I think we shouldn't look at the oil sector, the extractive industry and the sector in isolation. The revenue might be maybe 5 years off, if I'm being optimistic, but there are some immediate gains right now. The pipeline that is going to be constructed requires steel. It requires cement. It requires all these other things that that we can tap
Just
into.
manpower even.
Manpower. So ensuring that a large quota of that goes to local content is very important. That we are not importing steel to build the pipeline, at least the section that is in our country.
Some information. The recent research puts our local content at 28.
Imagine.
Means what is coming here is 28, 72 is going away.
So if we don't remedy some of those things, we will be conductors of this development, but we will not be benefiting from it. So I think it's important that local content is emphasized, and we benefit from the oil sector. Even right now, food, those guys have to eat.
I have hosted people here, and we've spoken about that.
Yeah.
Jen,
In the spirit,
30 seconds.
in the spirit of local content,
Yes.
ensure that the information, the data, whatever findings are openly shared and generated from those that are supposed to benefit.
Okay.
We shouldn't just sit up here and say everything is cool, but make sure that people are involved. The local governments should be involved in all these consultations and discussions, their communities and all the interest groups.
Siraj, 20 seconds.
Yes.
Can you deliver in 20? I'm being waved that seriously.
Yes, local content, we need to focus on a bigger picture, not only to think about the small employment that we are going to get, because if the entire investment is going to bring in close to 20 billion US dollars, at least we need to tap like 50% of that. And to tap that, you cannot tap it only by supplying welders. We also need to be sure that we should be able to have Ugandans starting up petrochemical industries, should be able to set up subsidiary industries, and so that we are able to get the trickle-down effect effectively.
Thank you very much, Siraj, Jen and Keith. It has been a nice discussion. We were discussing the budget, can you believe it? But we are bringing it down to you and how it matters, not only to you, but also maybe the policy makers. Thank you very much for joining us. We have been discussing the budget in line with bringing it in relevance to you, the citizen, but also part of activities of the budget month, which emphasizes budget transparency. Thank you for joining us. And coming up at top of the hour is the news.